So tonight we're going to look at how do we paint freely in watercolour, because it's a beautiful thing to be able to do. It's really enjoyable, but it also doesn't come easily, especially at the beginning when you don't really understand the medium. So I think a few things that are worth looking at as we go along is to paint freely, it's a really great idea to work small. So to work, A5 or, I've got here an A4 sheet of Archer's cold pressed 300 GSM watercolour paper, but if you're not used to painting this size or larger, then just go whatever size you're comfortable with, which might be half of this. So definitely go small, and I would say use hake brushes. Like use 2 and 1 inch hake brushes at this size, or even A5, and that will help you to just be very free with your mark making, rather than if you use some small brushes, like this, this one here or this one here, and you're just dabbing, you're much more likely to be playing on the page for a long time and be less free. So I'd say use hake brushes, get used to them, use them in that way. And then also just keep your colour palette to a minimum. Don't try and use too many colours, or work monochromatically, just with one colour. And that will allow you to be more free too in what you do. So let's do this landscape with the whole idea of looking at how do we be nice and free. For me, that involves working wet in wet, so let's wet the page. Some kids next door playing in the pool. The problems of recording during the day, hey? So let's wet the page. This is a 2 inch hake brush. This is a Holbein hake. I love Holbein hakes. They're my favourite hakes. But I do have quite a few Ron Ranson's ones too, and they're great. But they just hold a bit more water, which sometimes you might want, but sometimes makes life a bit more difficult. So we'll just wet the whole page. And this is just going to be a pretty dreamy sort of seascape. Nearly always I'll come in with the warms. You don't have to, but and this one's just going to have a very, very tiny hint of warmth. With Alizarin Crimson, if you want very weak warmth, yeah. So if you want a weak wash with Alizarin Crimson, you've got to manage that. It's a pretty strong pigment. So let's just come in a little bit up in here, a little bit on the horizon, and then a little bit down here like this, a little bit there, not much, little tiny bit, that'll do very weak. All right, now we'll get a little bit of, we might even just keep a bit in the brush, see how that goes. Get a little bit of cerulean blue now. And there's a little bit of it in the brush that'll just colour that cerulean blue a bit. So what we're doing here is just not trying to paint the landscape, we're just painting shapes. Just shapes with our 1 inch hake brush. Again, that's a Holbein hake. And what I might do is just grab a 2 inch hake. I rinse it out, and then it's still too full of water, so I flick it out a couple of times, get that water out. So when I load up with paint now, it'll be sucking that paint up. So I'm going to get a little bit of my favourite mix of Cobalt Blue Light Red, but I want to sort of see what that looks like before I put it on the page. Because initially I'm going to come in with that quite a light mix of this. I'm just going to come in and just, oh, not too light. I still want it to take up space. So I want it to come in and just go over the top. Yeah, there we go. So let's just come in and just, we'll try not to be too tight with our mark making. They're going to come in here with some pretty decent ones. I can strengthen that in a bit. Then we can come in along the horizon like nice, and then I love the way reflections go vertically on water. It's just great. It's really nice. I could even just grab a little bit of this Alizarin Crimson, just that's on the desk here, to just warm up a tad, just a few of those bits. Nice. It's lovely. So I might just clean up around the edges just to take the paint away. And you might be able to see just here and just here, there are two hairs on there, making the pigment do funny things. So while it's still wet, it's a great idea to just get a little set of tweezers and just pick that one up. Make sure you get it out of the end of the tweezer before you go to pick up the next one. If you do that soon while it's all wet, it'll disappear. You will never know that there was a hair on there, but if you wait too long, it'll start to create a mark. Like it probably already has a little bit, but it should slowly disappear. So while that's still wet, I'm just going to strengthen that top part and just come in a bit more, just a bit more dark. Come in here with a bit more dark and a bit more here, a bit more dark. I'm just going to create a bit of a hazy. So this is just a damp hake. No pigment in it. And I don't want to play too much. So that's the idea behind free watercolour, is that you don't play too much. Right, let's dry this layer and we'll just put in a little bit of detail. So let's just do a little bit of definition here on the horizon. I think. We'll get some removable tape because that's easy, it's never going to tear. I can just put it on the horizon where I would like it. Press it down there. Get a flat nylon, take the moisture out. And I'll just, I don't want a too crisp a line, but I just want a little bit of definition of where the horizon is, because it's easy to sort of miss that. We'll get a tissue, wipe and turn, another new tissue. All right, then we can take that off. This is 3M Magic removable tape. It just gives a little bit of definition there on the horizon. I'm just going to dry it again. By the way, if you guys need some more help with your watercolours, you can join me on Patreon. The link is in the description below and up here, one of these two. And yes, and if you're liking this video, give us a thumbs up. It helps the algorithm and helps me to help you. Help me help you. All right, let's dry this a little bit and then we'll do the little bit of detail. So when putting in this detail, again, you could sketch, but in some ways, sometimes it's just nice to be a bit free with your brush making. So I've got this mix of Winsor Blue, red shade and light red here. It's pretty strong. It's very strong, in fact. So it depends whether I want it to be like black essentially on the horizon, or whether I want it to be not too bold. I can obviously water it down to whatever point I want. And in some ways you're better off probably going lighter, and then you could always do a bit more, another layer over the top if you wanted to. So again, if I wanted to, I could tape off the horizon, but I don't want it to be too exact. So I'll just come in here, paint that in. And watercolour will always dry lighter, So I might just get a little bit more, a little bit stronger. And while that's still wet, I can just come in and just charge that essentially. So it's pretty easy to darken, pretty hard to go back the other way. So I might just use this is a sable, and it's a bit of a rigger, but it's not quite a rigger you would normally use for power lines or anything. It's just damp, and I can just help the watercolour. I can pick up a bit if I want with it. I can do a little bit of dry brushing. I can help it down if I want a bit more reflections. And again, if I want that to be stronger, I can charge that. Nice. Oh. And now I've got a rigger here. So this is a sable rigger, a Legend Regal rigger from Germany, size 1. So I'm just going to use this to do a little bit of detail just on the horizon. It's not going to be much. Just do a little bit here too. Nice. Into the wet, obviously it's going to sort of billow out a bit, but a bit more here. So you could, if you wanted, to put in some posts or something to make a bit more of a subject in this painting, but we'll just keep this painting very simple tonight because we're looking at painting freely in watercolour, and especially when you're just starting out, it's great to just, keep things nice and simple for you so that you don't get stressed or don't get worried about stuffing it up. So you could just completely stop here. If you wanted to put in a few posts, for instance, to just lead the eye to somewhere, because at the moment for me this lacks a little bit of a subject, just a little bit. And I think if I was going to turn this into a more of a finished painting, I would probably put in something for the eye, maybe some posts heading off, they're in the water here reflecting, some posts heading towards this point, and then maybe dry this and lift out some light here so that this becomes the subject right here. So this is drawing your eye to this part, and this is the subject. And even your eye would then go to these posts right off in the distance. So let's just dry this, but you could just totally stop here, okay? You could easily stop here, but we'll just do a little bit of detail here to just make this, from my point of view, a bit more balanced. So let's just lift out this area of light I want to lift out here. What I'll do is I'll get my more sticky 3M tape, put it just right above there, press it down here pretty firmly, get my flat nylon, get it wet, take a lot of the moisture out, and then just wriggle back and forth here, back and forth, and then wipe out. Winsor Blue Red shade has a slight tendency to stain, so if you go back and forth too many times, you won't lift out much of a light. And if I wanted more of a light, I could always scratch it out with a razor blade. I'm going to use my hairdryer to heat up the pigment so that when I go to get this off, I don't rip my paper. I might even just scratch a little bit back, a very fine line. Yeah, nice, that's nice. Just gives the eye something just very definitive to go there. In fact, I'm just going to continue that a little bit. So I think I'm going to leave this painting like this now. With this here, for me, this just gives a really clear subject now. And I really like that. And I don't feel like I need the posts anymore to bring the eye to here. I really like that now. So thanks for joining me on how to paint loosely with watercolour. It's a beautiful thing, and the medium of watercolour really does lend itself to that style of painting, especially wet in wet, to let it just do its thing on the page, not paint things exactly how you sort of think they should be, but to squint your eyes and just paint shapes and just think about warms and cools and shapes and those sorts of things. And just, you know, that's why it's great to paint small, because then it enables you to just be more free, more confident. You don't probably mind using up the paper, the paints, you know, all of that sort of thing, because sometimes you can get restricted by just watercolour costs too bloody much. And so, you know, sometimes you can just think, oh, I'm wasting pigment. But to paint well in watercolour, you need to use pigment, because otherwise it won't be strong enough on the page and you'll be painting sort of wishy-washy watercolours. So hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this video, please press like. And if you want to know about future videos, press the subscribe button, press the bell button so that you get notified. And if you want some more help with your watercolour, you can join me on Patreon. So thanks very much. Thanks for your support. I've reached over 20,000 subscribers. I am amazed, totally amazed, pleased and overjoyed. So thanks very much. And I will see you guys next week in next week's video. All right, good night. Bye-bye.